last talk from Rashid Rabi, the cyber threat hunter. So again, as I talked about the coolest career job titles, the cyber threat hunter is one that I'm looking to go find out that role a little bit more. He's with Deloitte & Touche, a cybersecurity threat hunter and PhD researcher in electrical engineering and ICS. Published author with IEEE, awarded the Cisco Global Security Scholarship, and more than 10 years of working experience in multiple industries for both IT and OT. He's going to talk to us today about some game theory approaches for defending industrial control system environments and specifically mapping industrial control system threat landscape to the ICS attack framework. I'm hoping he is with us on audio. And
yes, hello, Tim.
Awesome. Thank you very much. I turn it over to you, sir.
Thank you so much, Tim, and hello, everyone. And my name is Rashid. I work for Deloitte & Touche, and today we are going to talk about a game theory approach for defending the ICS environment. So, to start our presentation today, I have a question for everyone. So, what if I told you that tomorrow there will be no threat actors, there will be no attacker, there's zero malwares, everything safe, the internet safe, and the industry safe? Would you have a job on Monday? I think I will not have a job on Monday if there's not threat actors, if there's no attacker. And on the other side, if I don't have any defense mechanism, I'm not doing my job, and the attacker every day attack and breach my organization, I probably also will lose my job on Monday. So what I'm trying to say here is we do our decisions based on the other side decisions. We choose our best strategy based on the other player's strategy. And as John Donne says, no man is island, which is basically it happens in every day in our life. Every moment we make a decision, every time when you leave your home, going to your work, you decide you're going to take, if you want to take the metro, if you're going to take the car, the bike, if you want to choose a route, it depends on what other people are doing. If people are driving and they were not giving you a space for riding your bike, then riding a bicycle is not your best option at this moment, right? So it's very, very important to know what is people around us strategies so we can choose our best strategy. Similarly, no difference in cybersecurity also for ICS. For us as a defender to know what is the best strategy, that we are not overspending, we are not underspending, we are matching exactly the risk that we are facing, is very important to know what are the threats that we are facing, what are our adversaries, techniques, and strategies, so we can, based on that, decide what we're going to do. So today we are going to have like 3 games, hoping these 3 games will help us to answer a very important question. Am I overspending? Am I underspending? Does my spending match my actual risk? And how can I reduce the common error in my estimation? So we had so many amazing talks today, and I hope this conversation will help you to know how to utilize all the tools that we learned from today. How can we understand that we are in a game, look to this, to what we're doing in a game approach. So first of all, we're gonna have like a first game is like the prisoner dilemma. So I will ask everyone, please, if you can access the Slack chat, because we are gonna play this game together. Please do, and post the answers on the hallway, Rashid Rabi, so we can play this together. And this game will let us understand how strategies is very important on making the right decision. Then we're gonna start to apply that on 2 games like defend mechanism and finally the detection and monitoring. So let's do the first game, a prisoner dilemma. Here's the game. We have blue and red. Both are arrested for hacking our oil and gas summit. Hopefully this has not happened really. So the police caught them, and the police does not have evidence So they need their confession. Okay, so what the police are going to do, they put each one of them in a separate room and play the following game. The police offer them these choices. You accuse your partner committing the crime, which is meaning you betray your partner, you will go free, your partner will spend 3 years. If you stay silent, which is you cooperated with your partner, your partner accuses you, you will spend 3 years and your partner will go free. If both of you stayed silent, which is like both players are cooperated, each one of you will spend 1 year. If both of you betray each other and accuse each other, each one will spend 2 years in prison. So here's the game. We have blue and red. Blue have either to cooperate or betray. Red either cooperate or betray. If this is the result, if both betray, each one will spend 1 year in the prison. If they both cooperate, each 1 year in prison. If they both betrayed, each one 2 years in prison. If blue betray and red cooperate, blue will go free and red will have 3 years and vice versa. So here's the first scenario. You are red, okay? And you want to choose either to cooperate or betray. You have 2 scenarios. First, what if blue cooperated? As red, you are red. What would you choose, cooperate or betray? And you can post your answer, please, on Slack and see how people think. Like, what's the best strategy for you here? Yes, exactly. I see so many people say betray. So why betray? Because spending 0 years better than spending 1 year. Okay, the next one. If blue will betray, as a red, will you cooperate or betray? Exactly. So many people say it's betray because it's exactly, you spend 2 years in prison better than 3. The same thing for blue. Blue will have 2 situations. If red cooperated, the blue will best also to betray. And if red betray, blue will best scenario also to betray. So at the end, we will assume the best scenario is both of them to betray. However, if they both cooperated, everyone will spend 1 year, but the best strategy at this game, because they don't speak to each other, they don't know what the other person will do, they can't trust each other, then the best strategy for both of them at this point to betray. And one thing here, to understand the element of the game, this is what we really help us to understand how to play the game and navigate, is to know what is the element of the game. So we have players. So the game is the prisoner dilemma. The players is blue and red. The strategist for blue was to cooperate or betray. Similarly for red was cooperate or betray, and the payoff was the number of years in prison. Okay, so let's see how we can do that in an ICS scenario. So the second game now, we have defense mechanism. So in ICS, and what we're all doing here is we want to learn how to defend our OT environment to the best we can. So this game is basically, we are playing on the ICS threat landscape. And we have the attacker is our player, and the attacker strategy will be MITRE. And as a defender, we know how can we choose our best strategy. So let's see how this can happen. So ICS threat landscape, we have talked about this a lot today, and I'm sure lots of the audience here knows. And just to name some, like Dragon Energetic Bear since 2011 to 2017, has 84 countries. There's so many ransomware, we hear about them recently. They impact like lots of loss in sales up to like $135 million and so forth. So these threat landscape, also like Triton, I'm not going to speak about in details. I think my colleague before me covered this in much details, but what I'm trying to say here, there's kind of attacks as like Triton. We call them like targeted ICS, targeted attack ICS. So basically, try to need it to go to know your infrastructure very well before it's start to create the malware and impact your industry. So that's need someone to know, have a well knowledge about your infrastructure. But there's something else also about in the threat landscape that a lot of people doesn't talk about, which is the non-targeted malwares or the non-targeted malicious files. So this was done by Drago's project Mimic, and it was really cool that they found at any time that they collect logs from AV, from Virus Total, in 90 days, they found that the most threats or files was reported by the ICS community was non-targeted malwares, which means it's like a malware loose in the wood. So another thing that also in our threat landscape is our employees, is ourselves. If we are not well trained, we can do a lot of mistakes that impacts us also. So now we know, we talked about the threat landscape, and this is where the game is happening. So let's talk about the attacker strategy. So as Sergey was talking early this morning, that there's frameworks out there. We have MITRE, we have the kill chain, we have the diamond model. And one idea that I am proposing here that we can best utilize this framework is it's answering for us what is the attacker strategies. And instead of I'm going to spend some time to know what the attacker will do, what the attacker options, I have them here. Maybe they are not complete. It's not the perfect because you need to customize that for yourself. So now I know the attacker strategy. I have the tactic and techniques. There's over 100 tactic and techniques here. That's over 100 strategy for the attacker. And this will be impossible for each one of them to go and find the perfect strategy. If you have the time and resources, that's really great. But we will see a way, how can we have a starting point? The goal is I would like you, once you leave the today's session and the today summit, you can put what you learned in action and you start from somewhere. So let's talk about the defender strategies. The defender strategies is many solutions that we talked about it today. You know it in your environment. Let's name some of here. It's like the data died. Data died is a very great solution because you have here the data died. It does separate your OT environment and your IT environment, right? However, you don't, if you have like something like this sweet USP model, USP, somebody come with your maintenance, a third party, logged in your OT environment, you still infected. So what you can do is if you have a monitoring solution, you will be able to have that malicious traffic or anomalies based on like lots of analysis and detected. Another solution is very advanced, is like the hardware-based fingerprint detection and so forth. This is a very interesting solution I was reading about. It's really finding every sensor, the noise if every sensor that we have does have a specific specific frequency, which is the fingerprint for every sensor. And if you know that, if you know what is the fingerprint or the noise for every of your sensor, you can identify anomaly if anything happened or changed. And the way that you can do that is by using machine learning because you have many sensors in your environment. So using solution like machine learning and artificial intelligence also can be a really good strategy. So the way that the defender will choose what would be the best strategy is by knowing the payoff. In our first game, the payoff was how many years blue or red was spent in prison, right? So here, we want to know what the defender payoff. One of a really good way to calculate your payoff is your risk value. And this is one of the things, like even as a cybersecurity professional, I usually don't like to tell people like what they need to do. I'd like to give them information and I tell like, this is the risk and this is the impact. Would you like to take the risk or would you like to defend against it? And it's their decision if I give them all the information. So as a risk value, if I have the risk value for every risk, I can tell them this is my strategy and we have a discussion. But calculating the risk value, we have a big challenge because usually it's the potential impact, which we can calculate that very easily. We can monetary these values. You have, if this operation shut down, you're gonna lose this money if it's take for 1 day or 1 week. So you can actually calculate that. But the other factor is the likelihood of occurrence. And this is the threat probability. And many times we hear that in OT environment that this won't happen to us. And that when we look on the right side of this slide, the heat map, people or like sometimes we assume that, oh, this is not going to happen to us. So we predict on a low level threat, which in the actually it's on the high level threat. So how can we deal with that? How we can have like to predict the probability of the threat of over 100 tactic and techniques. So here is a good solution. If we categorize the over 100 tactic and techniques in the MITRE, and we consider that the attacker strategy, we can categorize them to 3 categories. The first one is the low sophistication. And when we have a low sophistication tactic and techniques, it's more likely will occur a lot because it doesn't require advanced techniques, doesn't require a lots of knowledge or skilled adversaries. Medium sophistication TTPs also be medium occurrence, and the high sophistications will be less occurrence because it does require more sophistication level. And as an example, if we said like the non-targeted is a low sophistication malwares and it's spreading so much, it's different than a targeted malware that is high sophistication, which will not occur too much. So this can be a good baseline to start. I know for every rule there's exceptions, but we can have this as a start point to categorize the attacker strategy. So after we categorize the attacker strategy, we can now have our solutions. So we can say for the low sophistication TTPs, we are going to use the data diet or firewalls to separate or to have an air gap for our OT environment. The second TTPs or the medium sophistication, we can use solutions like monitoring and aggregating logs, and how monitoring many times can stop a loss of incident happened in the past. And we can also, while we are doing monitoring, we need to focus on the non-target exploits. You will use exploits, which is malware that actually can impact both IT and OT, and prolific threats that it will elude your security measurement that you are using for the low sophistication TTPs. Then finally is the high sophistication TTPs. Your solutions here can be you're using the machine learning, artificial intelligence. You can use also the threat hunting. And threat hunting is something you need a person who goes and look for anomalies, takes the data, takes the logs, have strategies of how to find anomalies, and then take these anomalies, investigate it, and see if it's a false positive and false negative. And then if you have an advanced threat hunting, you actually can automate this process. So after I do my work, I do threat hunting activities, and once I find like true positive or false positive, I can have the code or the use case that are created and automate this so I don't have to do this manually again. So you will end up with a table like that. You have your asset identification, which we haven't touched base on it, but I urge everyone, if you can do asset management, asset identification, and group them as like class A, class B, class C, critical, medium, low, that's something I know Rob Lee talked about it a lot before, and it's very, very important to have that. And then the second step, when you have your risk assessment, you have high, medium, low, And as you can see, how you actually group them. So the high risk assessment, you will have like for all of your assets, like class A, class B, class C. And then your defense mechanism, the solutions that you have for the low sophistication level now, you know, it's need to be applied on the high risk, which is going to be applied on class A, class B, class C, and so forth for the medium sophistication and the high sophistication. So in understanding the elements of our game here, this game is a defense mechanism. The first player is the attacker. The second player is the defender. The strategies for the attacker here, we can actually categorize them in 3 categories based on MITRE and how we can map that to 3 level, medium, low, medium, high sophistication. And that can help us get a probability for occurrence for these threats. And then your strategies, I named here few, but everything we talked about today, everything like you're collecting, every vendor coming, pitching you solution, these are your strategies. And if you know how to use this like as a payoff and calculate your payoff, you will even before you wait for someone to pitch for a solution for you, you will go and look for a solution for that specific type of threats. And that actually can make a conversation with the high leadership much easier, because I can tell them like, hey, this is the risk, this is the value, the impact of the risk, and this is the solution. If you want to accept the risk, that's totally fine. If you want to defend against it, that's totally fine. You can tell them like what, like give them the information and they can understand, make a better decision. Final game is detection and monitoring. So I know some organizations now start to have lots of monitoring solution. Some still working on that, especially on the OT environment. So I want to talk about when it comes to monitoring and detection and monitoring. We see a loss of consuming resources because monitoring is so consuming to hardware resources, softwares, analysts to do analysis and escalation. Also if you have 24/7 monitoring. These are an SLA, so this is a lot of resources. And we want to know if we playing the game smart, that we are taking the best strategy in doing monitoring and use our use cases. So again, the attacker here is one of the player, and the attacker strategy, we can map them based like using MITRE, and we have attacker now have over 100 tactics and techniques. As a defender, my payoff here will be different. My payoff here will be that the performance of my use cases. Why? Because the performance of my use cases will make me either overspending or underspending, over-consuming my resources or under-consuming my resources. So let's see how you understand the performance of your use case. So basically, based on the information theory and signal analysis and detection theories, we come up with that confusion metrics. If you have traffic, benign and malicious, and you have a detection tool, if you have a malicious traffic that you detect, that's the true positive. If you have a malicious traffic that you did not detect, that's a false negative. Similarly, also for benign. So basically, we want to avoid the red areas and be on the blue areas. Let's see how this is we represent on graphs. So ideally, we would love to have this traffic separated, as we can see on our screen. The green area on the left, the red area on the right. This is the malicious traffic. This is the benign traffic, and the in between them, the line in between them is our 3-shot, which can be our use case. That would be really great. But reality, it does look like that. That both of them are overlapping. So when you separate between them, this is where you create the false positive and the false negative. And from there, you know that if you want to decrease your false positive, you are increasing also the false negative. What that means, if you have attack like phishing emails. Well, phishing emails to OT environment, probably we are not expecting a BLC to click on a link, right? So if I have a use case for a phishing email, then I would prefer to have a low false positive because I don't want to consume resources because that threat most likely may not have the impact on my environment. Similarly, if I am concerned on a high threat and I need to monitor that very, very well, like lateral movement or data exploitation, this is our very serious impact. Therefore, I will increase my monitoring, which means I will increase my false negative, and that I need to minimize any false negative in my environment. I cannot take the risk for a false negative in that threat. So by understanding that concept, we can put our table like that. We have the attacker TTPs, which is the attacker strategies. Again, we can group them low sophistication, medium sophistication, high sophistication. This is just as a good, simple start. You can categorize them in a different ways, on a different level. Again, on your defender detection performance, your goal when it's a low sophistication TTP to have a minimum false positive, medium to have an optimum false positive, which means it's not going to be the minimum false positive, but it's the optimum that you can tolerate the risk. And if it's high sophistication, you want to have the minimum false positive. Putting in our mind that if I'm increasing the false positive, I am decreasing false negative, which means I am increasing consuming resources. So it's very important to understand there's a relationship between increasing your false positive and decreasing your false negative. So you could come up with a table like that. These are the tactics. You can, instead of doing it based on techniques, you can do it based on tactics. You can just have a starting point. So if you have your initial access as low, then your goal will be a minimum false positive. If you have your your execution is medium, then your goal will be the optimum false positive and so forth. So finally, these are the three games we talked about them today: prisoner dilemma, defense mechanism, and detection and monitoring. As I mentioned to you, detection and monitoring, we have two players, attacker and defender. The strategy for the attacker was medium, low, as high sophistication level on the MITRE TTPs. And the player two strategies is to minimize the false positive, minimum false positive or minimum false negative. And the payoff here is the consumed resources. So again, no man is island. What we do is based on what the other person do. And when we look at that from a cybersecurity perspective, we can defend our environment much better while we're understanding what is the threats out there and what is the our opponent strategy are. Thank you, and any questions?